Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nandi Kaul. I'm the Program Officer for the International Business and Entrepreneurship Center, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to an exciting panel taking the leap from student entrepreneur to full time entrepreneur. And this is part of the 2022 Apex Business Plan Competition. This is a Rogers TV special presentation brought to you by our gold sponsor, the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. Every year, during the Apex Finals, we organize a formal panel that brings to you the big picture, forward looking perspectives for entrepreneurs. With the launch of the new venture track, the Apex Business Plan Competition has entered a new stage, bringing together student entrepreneurs and full time entrepreneurs to validate their business ideas and build meaningful connections. So, how does one transition from student to full time entrepreneur? We're about to gain valuable perspectives from the lens of industry, education, and entrepreneurs themselves. We are so grateful to have Krista Ross, CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, to guide us through today's discussion. Krista has led the largest chamber of commerce in this province with over 1,000 members, the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce as CEO for over a decade, with tremendous success and accolades along the way. To name a few, Krista was chosen Chamber Executive of the Year in 2017 by the Chamber of Commerce Executives of Canada, and in 2020, she was selected in the top 50 CEOs in Atlantic Canada by Atlantic Business Magazine. Krista also has 14 years as an award winning private business owner and brings results driven experience in a range of industries. A strong advocate for supporting local, Krista is a community leader, builder, economic development driver for Fredericton. Krista lives on Fredericton's north side with her daughter Rachel. Krista, again, I want to thank you so much for organizing this for us today, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Nandi, thank you so much. One of the highlights each year of the Apex Business Plan Competition is the Entrepreneur Panel, and I've been so fortunate to moderate it for the last number of years. So today, I'd like to welcome everybody who's watching with us, and I'd like to say a special thank you to Rogers TV for making this a special presentation and allowing our audience to be that much broader, and I'd like to welcome those who are watching through Rogers. So thanks for joining us. I'd like to also wish the very best of luck to all of the participants in the Apex Virtual Business Plan Competition. I've been a judge in one of the streams so far this year, and wow, amazing presentations, amazing business plans, and what wonderful entrepreneurs we have coming down the pipe to get their businesses going. So Nandi mentioned that today we're talking about taking the leap from student entrepreneur to full-time entrepreneur, and we're very lucky to have different perspectives to talk about that today. We have Sam Poirier from Potential Motors, Hannah Chisholm from Excitables, and they're going to be talking from the perspective of the entrepreneur. We've got Kelly Smith from Planet Hatch, who guides a lot of entrepreneurs and supports them on their journey. So she's going to give us some perspective there. And also Dr. David Ford. He's a professor with the UNB Management, Faculty of Management. So he's going to give us that perspective. So I'm going to start today's panel by asking each of them to introduce themselves, and we're going to start off with Sam. So tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Awesome. Thanks, Krista. Thanks for the introduction and everything, and excited to be here. So yeah, a bit of background on myself. So I'm Sam, one of the co-founders of Potential Motors, but my background is actually in mechatronics engineering. So I did my undergrad degree at UNB, like probably a good number of people on this call here, and from there, went and did the master's in TME program as well. So know David quite well from that, as well as other things along the journey. And through that process, started Potential Motors. So actually originally worked on converting vehicles to electric with the goal of improving sustainability and by converting gas and diesel vehicles to electric. But since then have migrated the company towards actually working on advanced software control for electric vehicles, focused in off-road vehicles specifically.
Thanks a lot, Sam. We're very excited to learn more about your experiences and your journey as we go through our panel today. Next up, I'm going to ask Hannah Chisholm to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about herself, her company, and where she's at right now.
Thanks, Krista. So my name is Hannah. I'm the founder of Excitables Plant-Based Egg. Excitables manufactures and distributes a plant-based alternative to eggs made from chickpeas, which you can use for a variety of cooking and baking applications such as omelets, baked goods, batters, etc. I launched the business shortly after I graduated from university. I graduated from St. FX University with a bachelor's in business administration with a focus in entrepreneurship. I launched Excitable shortly after that for a long period of time, made the product myself, sold it at the local farmers market. And now we've grown to over 80 retail locations across Eastern Canada. And we just launched in Sobeys before Christmas.
Hannah, that is so exciting, and we're looking forward to hearing more of your story. And I'm going to throw out there that I've met both Sam and Hannah in the past through being alumni of Apex, and also Hannah through the Summer Institute. We've spoken to Sam through the Seed Committee. So I feel like I know a little bit about your stories, and I'm so happy that we'll get a chance to share that with those who are joining us today through the Apex competition and those who are joining us through Rogers. Next up, I'm going to ask Kelly Smith to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about herself and what she does.
Thanks, Krista. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly. I'm the director at Planet Hatch. I've been involved with Apex over the last 7 years, either as a judge or in some sort of capacity. So super excited to be here and happy to share my thoughts today. At Planet Hatch, we are an award-winning entrepreneurship center. We are located in Knowledge Park. Planet Hatch helps grow and start up helps entrepreneurs grow into internationally competitive startups and entrepreneurs. We help all of our, I made a few notes here and it's obviously not helping, but we help all of our clients through 5 different pillars. They are business counseling, funding, programming, facilities, and events. So any number of those would be able to help our clients. And we help them through a few different service areas. So those would be business model, business strategy, customer acquisition, and markets. I always tell my clients, like, we don't focus on product development. You are the expert in that area. I'm never going to tell you what to do with your product or your service, but we can help you with those back-end skills. So that's what we do at Planet Hatch.
Thanks so much, Kelly. And Kelly and I have been working together or as in stakeholder groups. I think as long as she's been working in the ecosystem, probably 7-8 years. So it's great to have you on board the panel today, Kelly, and looking forward to the sharing of your expertise with the folks that are joining us. Last but certainly not least, Dave Ford. He's a professor at UNB, and I'm going to get him to tell us a little bit about his background and what brings him here today.
Thanks, Krista. So I'm an assistant professor in the Faculty of Management at UNB. I teach courses in entrepreneurship, innovation, and strategic management in both the undergraduate and the graduate levels. I do research on modern history of business, science, and technology. And I guess the panel is relevant for me because I've been involved as an advisor or a board member with a dozen UNB startup companies since I started in this in 1999, a long time ago. I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I have to say, Dave and I have gotten to know each other through various business plan competitions, courses, speaking engagements at UNB. And so I feel very fortunate to have had a chance to interact with all of the panelists to a certain extent over the last number of years. So exciting to have you with us today. So today we are going to ask each of the panelists a few questions, get their insights, and then at the end, we're going to have some time for some questions from our guests. And you can enter those into the chat and we'll ask those questions for you. I'm going to start the questions. We're going to go back in the reverse order. I'm going to start with Dave. Dave, my first question for you today is it better for student entrepreneurs to develop their ventures on campus, or should they get off campus?
Good question. So when I first started at UMB, I thought it was best for student entrepreneurs to get off campus and develop the venture somewhere else. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One was unless your customer niche is our university staff, faculty, and students, really most of your customers, suppliers, investors, they're all off campus, and it's great to be close to them, physically proximate with them. The other reason is because the core mission of the university, although it does a whole bunch of things, is really research, teaching, and service, and that's where the deep knowledge lies. And so that was the assumption I had. But I guess through my experience with a number of companies, including Q1 Labs and Sam's company comes to mind, it really benefited in a hybrid model in that the students were here on campus and then also off campus, either with their partners or themselves. So in the case of Q1 Labs, they developed their Q Radar product by having access to the university's computer network. Like that was a really valuable on-campus resource that they had. And Sam, I'm speaking for you, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the advantages that Sam had is he had both undergraduate programs in engineering and graduate program, the MTME program, that really allowed him to not only learn about entrepreneurship and practice it, but also sort of meet a network of people that he might not have met otherwise if he hadn't had all of those connections on campus. So I think both, I think, is where I've got to in terms of the on-campus, off-campus thing.
And for students who have the benefit of being, many startups don't come through the university system. So for those that have the benefit of coming from there, what a great opportunity, as you said, to be part of that ecosystem and the network that's already created and the people who have gone before them and forged the path. So thanks for that. I'm just going to add for our viewers and for those that are joining us today, we're probably going to just ask each person to answer their question, but if somebody from the panel has something they'd like to add to another person's question, that's awesome as well. Maybe just raise your hand or turn on your mic rather, if you have something you want to add. But otherwise, I want to get through a lot of questions for our guests. So I'm going to go to you next, Sam. My question for you is, did you participate in accelerators or programs like that? What about joining accelerators? Do you recommend it, or should people go it alone?
Awesome. Yeah, we've definitely had quite a bit of experience with accelerators. And I think to David's point, one of the benefits of starting your your venture out of school is that school is in itself kind of accelerator, especially the programs that we went through there with TME, because, for example, we did the undergraduate program in engineering, which basically through that we were, forced, I say, we wanted to do this, of course, but work on your project, which was for us was converting a vehicle to electric, which was very much focused on the technical side of things at that point, but also starting to explore, the ideas of going out, talking to customers, and getting pushed towards that side of things, where originally, my mindset, at least, and my co-founders, is very much on, let's build this cool technical product. So I think, David, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think there's a lot of benefits to coming out of school, but then once you get out of there, I think that there's a lot of benefits to accelerators. So we went through the Summer Institute, we did Energy Adventures. Those are both two local ones in Fredericton, but then moving on from there, we also did remote ones, so Plug and Play Mobility, which is based out of Silicon Valley, but is kind of international, as well as the Canadian Technology Accelerator for Auto Tech, which is one that's led by the Trade Commission. So we've done a lot of different accelerators, and it might sound like a lot, but I definitely think there's benefits to each part of it. So I guess I'll start at the beginning and the earlier stage ones, because I think we've done kind of early stage and later stage types of startups, where the early stage ones are, I think you benefit from them if you don't necessarily have the experience of starting a business or going through that before, because they basically, you may come out of school with a certain idea around, like Kelly mentioned, you're the expert on the product idea that you have, but you might not be the expert around building the business skills that are necessary to create an actual business, which means like hiring people, doing marketing, just making your brand extremely clear so people understand what you're talking about, all these different things that come into running a business that you don't you might not know when you're thinking, oh, this is a cool product idea that's solving a problem. So what's nice about Accelerator is that, like the Summer Institute and Energy Adventures, for example, that we went through, is that they really walk you through that aspect of it and kind of tell you to step away from the product itself for a little bit. I mean, you're still focused on it, but look at it as a whole in terms of what is the problem you're solving for your actual customers, what are the things that you need to build and skill sets you need to build to be able to take it from where you're at today to something that is actually going to be sustainable business. So I'd say that's the benefit of some of the early stage ones, and those ones require a lot of time. Like you're in there every day with people who are helping to mentor you and aspects like that. Then there's the other side of accelerators, which are closer to what we did with Plug and Play Mobility and the Canadian Auto Tech accelerator. And those are very hands off. And at this point, like us as a business, we had a pretty good idea of how the fundamentals needed to happen. But what we were looking for is connections within the industry and with investors. And that's really where some of these other accelerators can help, is by connecting you with incredible people throughout the industry. So this basically let us talk with people who are leaders within the automotive industry, OEMs. So companies, think of companies like Volkswagen, BMW. You actually have to pitch to these companies, but the overhead of the program isn't necessarily you're in there talking with people every single day. You're actually able to run your business, and then once a week you might have some sort of event where they're helping you to make these introductions and things like that. So I think it depends on the stage that you're at, the level of benefit that you can get from an accelerator. But I think both early and later stage, there's a ton of accelerators out there. I think you can still benefit from them at either point in the journey, whether it's just learning the fundamentals or looking for ones that are more specific to the niche and problem that you're working on that can kind of help with connections.
I have a tiny follow-up question to that. Do you find most of the accelerators you apply to participate, or you simply are able to get in because you want to, or do you have to pitch to get in?
You absolutely have to pitch to get in. So typically the process, the way that works is, I found later stage you'll have some accelerators that'll reach out to you, but earlier on it's definitely you're looking for ones that will be a good fit. And for us, starting locally with one that's close to home, and there's in most provinces and places now, there are accelerators that can kind of help at this early stage of learning about the fundamentals. Like for Halifax, there's Volta, there's ones in Ontario. Here we have Summer Institute and Energia. So basically the process works is you pitch them the business idea that you have, and this can be pretty early stage, but you just got to show that you have, like at this point, they're really understanding the problem that you're tackling, the product idea that you have, and are you the right team to be working on this project, or can you develop into the right team to be working on the project?
I will say unequivocally, the benefit of being in an accelerator would not have been lost on me when I bought my first business, which was back in '97, and there was nothing like this around. That when you speak of being part of these groups and the mentorship that's provided there, the actual education piece, but the mentorship is so valuable. So I'm going to give my next question to Kelly. Kelly, what are the themes and commonalities that you see when you are dealing with entrepreneurs that are also students?
Thanks, Krista. So I love that you differentiated between student entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs that are also students. It's kind of a bit of a gripe that I have when people say like student entrepreneurs or part-time entrepreneurs or mom entrepreneurs. Like I find it discounts what you do. I think that no matter what else is going on in your life, if you are an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur no matter what. Whether you're working on your business 5 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 40 or 80 hours a week, it doesn't matter. You're still an entrepreneur. So that's something that like is really important to me to kind of make a differentiation. So I find for commonalities that I see with entrepreneurs that are also students or have previously been students recently, it's usually the way that they ideate or come up with their ideas. So I see there's typically two ways, and one is very problem and solution based. So they've had this problem, it's bothering them, they can't find a solution in the market, they create it. And I would dare say that Hannah is very much the perfect example of this. She had a problem, she couldn't eat eggs, she created the solution, right? And then the other one is very research-based. So you kind of have a curiosity. You might be studying something within your undergrad or your master's, and you're doing a lot of research, and then you realize that you can take that research and possibly commercialize it. And basically, the process is just very methodical. I always find that the entrepreneurs that were previously students or still are students, the ideas that they're coming up with are very innovative. They are usually first to market or something that doesn't exist out there. Like they're really trying to find those gaps that are existing in the market. And sometimes they also have patentable intellectual property. So just kind of that next stage of clients, I guess.
Thank you very much. And following up on your comment, and you referred to Hannah. Hannah, why did you start your own venture? Was it course driven? Was it driven by passion? Was it driven by an allergy to eggs? Tell me about what made you decide to start your own venture.
Of course. And I always love this question because I think my story is rather funny. I've always had a fascination with starting your own business and entrepreneurship in general. And I love to tell this specific story, but me and my younger sister would have a lemonade stand at the end of our driveway when we were kids. I think we were like 9 and 7 or something. And I lived in a very rural part of Nova Scotia, so we did not have a lot of customers. There was many days where we made $0 off our lemonade stand. But rather than get frustrated with our lack of customers, we kind of sat down and developed some strategies as to how we can make more money for the summer. And we remembered that there's a music festival that goes on in our community every summer. So rather than close up shop, we pooled our allowance together and made as much lemonade as we possibly could and went to the end of the road to sell. And we sold out within 2 hours, made $250, which was like triple the allowance we would have made all summer. And ever since that moment, I've always just had that kind of entrepreneurial itch, I would say. I did a bunch of other small ventures throughout high school. And that's also what led me to take entrepreneurship at St. FX, because I always knew I wanted to have my own business when I grew up. I just didn't know what the idea was going to be or when I would start it. And St. FX had this incubator program for the summer called the Wallace Family Internship. And I just wanted to do this program so bad. I started to think, I was like, what can I apply for a business idea? And then it kind of dawned on me. I had this working recipe for a chickpea-based egg that I used for my own purposes for a number of years, which can be used to make omelets and baked goods and stuff like that. And I thought to myself, I was like, veganism and plant-based eating is becoming so popular. Perhaps this can become a product. And eventually came up with the name Excitables, applied for the incubator program. And then I used Excitables for class projects, entered business competitions, and then of course eventually launched it as an actual business after high school or university rather.
I think that story is quite extraordinary, and I'm really excited. I know the first time I heard you pitch, I was just so excited about your product because it really had a niche market that was going to be guaranteed to buy it because there was nothing else that compared. So really exciting. You've talked a lot about universities, what support you got, and different incubators and so on. And Dave, I'm going to direct my next question to you. How do you find that universities are supporting entrepreneurial students?
So I guess we've covered some of those topics already, just through the examples of that Sam and Hannah have given. So the last 15 years, you've seen a lot of entrepreneurship programs arise at both the undergraduate and graduate level, especially in engineering and management schools across the country. So that's what we're seeing in Apex. There's just a lot of students from those programs, but I think it's also great that we're seeing students from other degree programs as well who are participating. That's really quite exciting. Sam talked about the incubators and accelerators that are both on and off campus, or in some cases, we've got partnerships between UMB and Planet Hatch that brings in accelerators into our academic programs, as Planet Hatch has been doing with some of their companies being involved in our MBA programs, sharing the space with the students and developing business plans for those companies. There's maker spaces on campus, so places to actually physically design and build products, and that's a more recent development. There's funding programs, so like Apex, there's sort of a number of small-scale funding programs at UMB, and we're not unique. You see that all across the country as well. And then there's some bigger type of funding programs. Mostly they're externally funded, so one example is New Brunswick Innovation Foundation just recently announced a $50,000 early stage commercialization fund. The money comes to professors, but it would, in this case, go to the students who are developing the venture, and they'd use it for patenting if they were going to do that, or hiring people and so on. I think some of the frontiers that haven't really developed, and I think are sort of the next things that universities will get into, is renting out space to student entrepreneurs. So there's been some of that, like IncuTech and others, but we've got some really great space at UMB and all across the country. And I don't know that that's being utilized as much as it could be for some of the student ventures. And then I think another new frontier are internship programs. So those co-op programs, there's some quite famous ones across the country, really focused on small and medium-sized employers, but not the startup space. And we're now seeing the beginning of that, where we have, for example, students who can do an internship with a startup as opposed to a bigger company. So I'm sure there's things I'm forgetting, Krista, but that's a pretty good list for now.
Dave, I would say that the universities have made great inroads into the business community and to the community at large. Certainly when I started working here at the Chamber 10 years ago, and previously when I worked here in the early 90s, there really wasn't that much interaction between business and even the faculty of business, or faculty of business administration as it was known then. But what we're seeing today is, whether it's the TME program, the BBA, or the management program, MBA, like those students are engaging with the business community through programs of the universities. So I think that's been a great corner to turn, because it gives real life experience and real life examples, but through that university setting. So I think that's been a great eye opener too for business owners and industry to see what's available in terms of the entrepreneurship ideas and what's coming into industry next. So and certainly the universities have been leading that. Kelly, I guess adding to that, what would you say the differences that you're seeing in entrepreneurs who are coming out of the university system versus perhaps more traditional entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I really love this question, because it's there are a few differences. So what I typically see from entrepreneurs coming out of the university is there's a very academic approach to starting up the business. Everything is by the book. There's a real discipline there, and I don't know if that is coming from kind of like the university setting and their studies, but there's a real serious discipline. And if I'm honest, some of my favorite or like best clients to work with are coming out of the university, because they do have that discipline, they have that drive. The kind of the process that they typically work through is the exact process that you should, and it starts with the business plan. It moves to the validation of the product or service. They then go to kind of like a small selling or proof of concept. If they need to innovate or reiterate whatever they're doing, they do that, and then they kind of go from there and scale. So that's kind of the perfect roadmap for any entrepreneur, and I find that a lot of the entrepreneurs coming out of the university follow that. With my more, I guess I call them regular entrepreneurs or traditional entrepreneurs, it's typically I have somebody that comes in, they have a skill or a trade that they really love to do. and they decide that they want to take that full time and they want to own their own business within that skill and trade. So for example, let's say they're a hairdresser, they're working in a salon, they decide that they want to open their own salon, and that's great, and we need all kinds of those people. But kind of the differences that I see with that is they are doing the skill and the trade, and then they're moving into the business owner, but they don't realize that they're not going to continue doing that skill or trade day in, day out. They're also on top of that doing all of the scheduling, they're managing all of the employees, they're also working on the business, right? So they're doing the business plan, they're submitting things to CRA. So there's kind of a big disconnect there, or I shouldn't say disconnect, but a difference there. And one thing that I definitely see from the entrepreneurs coming out of the university is they have better business plans. You know, they, like I said, they really have that academic approach, and they really have that discipline that they've pulled through. Financial projections might be a little bit more optimistic than the typical entrepreneur, but that's okay. We can work with that. But yeah, they typically have a really, really good, solid business plan, and they put a lot of time and effort and, like I said, discipline into it. So.
That's a great answer. But what it tells me is that perhaps there's even more opportunity for universities to be providing some type of entrepreneurship certificate programs for someone who's perhaps a technician of some sort and wants to open their own business, but really does not have that background that folks like Hannah and Sam have had in learning how to create a business plan and all the steps that they need to go through. So there you go, David. There's your opportunity for a new business at your end. I'm going to ask Hannah the next question. Hannah, I'm really interested to know what was your experience with Apex? You were in it, I think it was in 2018. And why do you think it's important to participate in case competitions and in programs like the one we're participating in today?
So I had a real struggle getting to Apex over that year. Sam, if you remember, it was like a torrential rainstorm in January. So like all of the sewer systems, or not sewer systems, but drain systems in Fredericton were all getting clogged and stuff. I think I waited like an hour and a half for a cab at the bus station the day I got there. So I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a very interesting weekend. It was my first time ever in Fredericton, and it was my second business competition that I was competing in. I think I was one of very few participants who came from other universities. There's a lot of UNB participants that year. So I was really nervous. Like it was my first business competition where I was completely by myself. I was the only person from St. F. I didn't know a single person there. So of course I was like super nervous about like meeting people or going to events and stuff like that. But I am so happy I did. Oh my gosh. Like I think like Apex was really, really fun for me. They had, all kinds of events, like obviously the panels and stuff that took place. I got so much great feedback on my business and my pitch. And of course, the people that I met, I think really changed the trajectory of my business, because whenever I went to Apex in 2018, it was the year I was graduating. And at that time, I was still weighing my options. Do I want to take Excitables and make it a full-time business after I graduate? Do I want to go and work at another business for a period of time? And so I still wasn't sure if Excitables was something I wanted to do after I graduated. And then at Apex, in addition to meeting Sam and the Potential Motors team, I also met with another entrepreneur, Curtis Kennedy, who got first place, won over me. And then like we all met that weekend and connected, and Kurt told me about this program called the Summer Institute, which Sam also participated in. And I thought to myself, like, this is an excellent program. Like, I'm definitely going to apply because I would love to take Excitables full time after I graduate. And I think this program would really help me be able to do that. So of course I applied to the Summer Institute and then got accepted. Both me and Sam moved to Fredericton, did the program, and then launched Excitables literally right after the program completed. So had I not gone to Apex or met any of these wonderful people from Fredericton, I probably would have not started Excitables after I graduated. So you never know who you're going to meet at these kind of events or competitions that could really change your life. So I definitely encourage people to go outside their comfort zone.
That is inspirational, and it will encourage others to do these competitions and participate, because it is a bit nerve-wracking, especially your first time. I would suggest too, you've hit upon something that is a Chamber of Commerce theme, and that is networking. And it's really important to build that network of like-minded people who can potentially be mentors or give you advice, or perhaps they've just been there and they can be an ear to listen. But when you can meet people that are going on the same journey as you are, albeit with a different product or a different service, that's what building the power of the network, that's what it's about. So thanks for that good advice and encouragement to others to follow that path. My next question is for you, Sam. You started your company with several co-founders. What tips do you have for people who are starting out for building that initial team of co-founders, and how that can build your company? And take it a step further. How did you get from there to here, which is, I think you're up to 20 employees? Tell us a little bit about that, Sam.
Yeah, sure. And so I think my experience has been quite a bit different than Hannah's through this, because Hannah has taken this solo, which I say kudos to you, because that's just incredible that you've been able to do everything you've done just by yourself. Of course, with your network and everything, but really you just leading the way. So maybe you'll be able to comment on this if we have enough time afterwards as well on that side of the experience. But for me, I think having co-founders in general definitely made the whole process a lot easier, like just from the pure support side of things, because through these accelerators and through the university network, you get these people around you who are able to help, but they're not necessarily in every single day doing the same things as you are. So, we started out the company with 4 people working on the original concept, and that's 4 people who are always there to kind of pick up the slack if somebody has something else that's going on, or if there's you're burnt out from just working on something incredibly long time. Because I mean, especially in the first stages, and really hasn't changed that much. You're putting in a lot of work into this idea because you're really passionate about it and excited about it. So having people who can kind of step in and I guess take up some of the load when you're maybe not feeling as motivated, it's definitely pretty helpful. In terms of actually setting up and structuring the team, I think that's something that we really didn't spend a ton of time thinking about when we originally built the company, but certainly I encourage people to do that, to be able to understand what are the skill sets that each person is bringing to the team over the long term too. It's hard to understand it right away, but start thinking about what are the motivations behind different people, and what are the things that they really enjoy doing and could see themselves doing in the long term, because there's a lot of different aspects that will grow out of the original stages. At first, you might all be developing the product, which was the case for us, but eventually you're managing relationships with these mentors that you've created, but also different funding organizations and venture capital and partners and things like that. But then you're also managing people on the team as we get to a larger team, and then of course creating the technical vision for the company. So I think one thing I would encourage is thinking about at the beginning, what are the skill sets that each person is bringing to this, and how is that going to evolve over time as you grow the company. The second point I'd add to it is thinking about sorry, lost my train of thought there with that. I'll leave that there. But I guess moving on to the second part of your question was with how it's changed over, going from the really 3 co-founders who I guess moved on from the first stages to being a team of 20 now, which we are. A lot has changed, I'd say, is the biggest thing. But I think, having that key set of co-founders at the beginning helped to make that transition easier and easier through each new person coming on. And I think we also learned through the stages about, what are the important things to consider in terms of hiring people, like for your first hire versus your third or fourth hire and things like that. Because at the beginning, you're also learning about what are the skills that you need to bring in. For example, we brought in our first person who was on the software side of things to be able to help aid in improving that aspect, which obviously, really improved the company. But, one thing that I think we could have looked at in hindsight is, bringing out somebody with more experience on, I guess more experience than the young or youth that we are at the time, to be able to look at, how you're going to build this company out and start bringing in 20 people over the next 2 years, which is what ended up happening with us. So, I mean, I think about really what are the big gaps that you have, let's fill those immediately and then kind of expand from there, because it'll certainly make things a lot easier. And as you go from 3 people to 20 people, a lot of things start to change in terms of process. Like you go from everybody just throwing stuff up on the whiteboard and how to manage it to starting to use different tools like Jira and Confluence and things like that to actually have oversight on all the work that's happening. So certainly changes, but overall for the good. One thing that I guess I would add is on the founding side of things, a really great book to check out if you are thinking about starting a company or in the process of it. Even now is The Founder's Dilemma, which talks about basically the different structures that you can have in starting a company, whether it's you and your friends who are kicking it off, or it's you and colleagues that you have, or if it's you and your spouse or something like that. There's lots of different ways to start a company, and really things that you should consider in structuring it, because the reality is that a lot of ventures do fail, and a lot of the reasons for why ventures fail is because of the team that originally started it will have some sort of challenges along the way that could lead to things not working out. So definitely check that book out as well.
Thanks very much for that. And I would say that one of the biggest areas that we hear even the most seasoned entrepreneurs and business owners talk about is HR. The challenges of attracting top talent, the challenges of a tight labor market, but even just the challenges of managing multiple personalities. And as a business grows, that becomes even more difficult if you don't have, a whole set of processes in place. A piece of advice that I've always told people, and what I believe in is hire for the soul and train for the role. Now, obviously, you have to have a certain skill set for just about any job, but you can train people on specifically what it is that you're looking for them to do if they have that basic skill set. But you can't, it's really hard to train someone to be, a hard worker and to be a team player and to be, a positive person, a great add to your team. So, if I could give a piece of advice today, that might be my advice, is to make sure you're stacking your team with those awesome people that you want to work with and that want to be part of the team.
If I could add one point to that, because I mean, we definitely had that experience, because I think with what we're working on, it's very technical heavy and very complex. So we're constantly thinking, especially at the beginning, let's hire on somebody who has really, really good experience with this specific niche. And we managed to find somebody who was incredibly technically talented. Like they were one of the smartest people I've ever met, and we managed to bring them onto the team, which was great. But in the interview process and everything, there was some small red flags on the personality side and cultural fit side that we kind of pushed off because of the fact that they had this really incredible technical talent. But the reality is that after 3-4 months of dealing with challenges in terms of how the person fit into the team and different personality traits, things like that, ended up having to let the person go because of that. And we didn't get nearly the level of technical benefit to the team as we thought we would, just because of the fact that that person isn't working effectively because they're having challenges with the team. The rest of the team isn't working as effectively because of this one person. So I would totally agree with that sentiment. I mean, you definitely want to look at, how is this person going to fit into your team? Are you going to be able to work with this person every single day? Are they passionate about what you're doing and can be there as a leader in the company? Especially, as a startup, every person you're bringing on, you got to be thinking about them as being a leader in several years within the company. So yeah, I think that's a great point that you brought up.
Thanks very much. We're getting close to the end of our time. We've got about 15 minutes left. So I'm going to ask each of you one last question, and I'll ask you to keep the answers short so that we can have a few questions at the end. And folks, if you're watching, if you're participating today, make sure you put your questions in the chat. Nandy's going to be sending them directly to me by text, and we'll get to those questions soon. So Dave, I'm going to ask you this question, and it follows up on what Sam was just talking about. Do you think it's better for student entrepreneurs to attract experienced entrepreneurs into the venture or to go it alone?
So the simple answer is attract those experienced entrepreneurs into the venture. There's so much to learn. It always takes more money and more time, even though you think it's not going to. And so if you can take steps to learn from experience and shorten those learning cycles, it makes sense. So I think the real question is, what's the framework in which you engage people? You bring those people in, and one option is to form an advisory board or a board itself. My experience with advisory boards is they don't cost anything. People give their time. They meet 3 times a year or so. And the input is limited is the downside in those positions. It typically is very strategic type of input. If you want to go in the other direction, you can bring someone in as an equity partner in the company with shares vesting in line with contributions. This is a long-term and deep relationship, given the sharing of equity. And then I think in the middle is our consulting relationships, employment relationships, those kind of things where you can do more than an advisory board. You can meet once a week and get that kind of input. And when you don't maybe need that expertise anymore, you've grown out of it, you can then sort of move on and bring on different kind of resource into the company. So I think that the answer is yes. You really want to bring them in. And the real question is, what's the form in which you engage those people, and then how do you find them? What's the network that you tap into to bring those people in?
Thank you very much. And I would say I sit on a couple of boards for businesses, advisory boards for startups. And oh my goodness, it's fascinating, it's exciting, and it's amazing to see these businesses develop and grow. And so I think there's lots of people out there that would like to add a little bit of excitement into their career. Maybe they're at the other end of their career where they've been at something for a long time and they're looking for something to really spark their interest. So, I think that's a good idea. Kelly, I'm going to ask you, what do you think are the characteristics that every entrepreneur has to have to be successful?
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple of things that I always mention to people to do to be successful or to kind of keep in mind. One of the kind of keys to success, or like one of the more tangible things, is do a business plan. Please do a business plan. Everybody needs a business plan. It doesn't matter if you're going to the bank, where you're going for financing or any sort of programs, you need to have a business plan. I know everybody that's attending Apex has done that, so check on that. But it's really gonna help you figure out that roadmap. Also use your business plan. It's a living document. Go back to it, figure out what's working, what's not working, what are you doing that's in the business plan that's not working. Like use it to help you go through the different stages of your business. Also surround yourself with other people that are going through something similar. So kind of, we touched on this earlier, surround yourself with those like-minded people. So hang out with your friends that are also starting up a business. They're going through something similar as you. They're in that same mindset. You don't necessarily have to enter into a formal mentorship relationship or anything like that, but just be around those people that are, again, going through the same thing. If you don't have friends that are also starting up businesses, get involved. So here at Planet Hatch, we have our membership. You can work out of our co-working space. There's other entrepreneurs who are also starting up their businesses that you can, have collision points with them in the kitchen or in the co-working space. Attend a networking event through the Chamber of Commerce, like Krista mentioned earlier. And just as Hannah mentioned, talk to the other people that are here at Apex. Make those connections. Keep those connections as you move on through your process of your business. It's going to be really valuable for you. Make sure you're asking questions. Don't be afraid to admit, hey, I don't know this. Nobody knows everything. Everybody wants to know everything, but nobody knows everything. And be really honest with yourself. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Again, you're not going to be good at everything. and you're not supposed to be. But if you know what those strengths are and what your weaknesses are, you can hire for those. Exactly like Sam mentioned earlier. Like, just know what those kind of gaps are in your team, and that's okay as long as you are aware of them. You can make up for that through hires or through like contracting out to people. And kind of the last thing is, be vulnerable. Like, don't be afraid to take feedback. If you're getting feedback and it seems like it's negative, put the lens on it. Like, okay, how can I use this to help my business? Why is this person telling me this? Are they trying to help me, or are they trying to hurt me? Typically, they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to kind of help your business along. And just kind of think about it in a different way. Put yourself in a few different shoes, and just kind of see how you can make your business better. Or, is this good feedback that I should think about? If it is, great, take it. Sometimes it isn't always the best feedback, but as long as you are open and vulnerable and at least considering it, then that makes you really coachable, and it makes you a great client to work with.
Kelly, thank you for that, and thanks for the Chamber of Commerce Network shout out. I appreciate it. My next question is for Hannah, and I know the burning question that we all want to know is, how the heck did you get a brand new product into 80 stores, including Sobeys? Fill us in.
So it was a lengthy process. I mean, it's taken me like over 3 years to get where I am today. And I mean, every industry is different. Like, I can best speak to food-based products. So in the early days, I was making the product myself, selling it at the farmers market. I did the Garrison Night Market and the Boyce Farmers Market in Fredericton for a number of months before I got into any stores. And so that helped me kind of validate the product concept, validate the formula that I was using back then, get feedback and stuff like that, and also start developing some, I would say, demand specifically in the Fredericton area. So after I did the farmers market for a period of time, my customer base started to grow. And so local health food stores started to reach out to me at that period of time, or a Whole Foods, Sequoia, some other stores in Nova Scotia started to find out about the product because there was this kind of buzz surrounding Excitables at the time. And so then I started pursuing a independent distribution relationship with a number of health food stores in the local area. And so I really kind of grew that relationship for a number of years, started to grow into Ontario and stuff like that. A lot of cold calling is involved with that process, a lot of cold emails and stuff like that. But social media is a really cool tool to help leverage sales relationships and get into stores nowadays. Like, I'm able to connect with consumers in Ontario and stuff like that and get them to request to carry Excitables into stores. Now that I'm working with Sobeys, obviously it's much more complex and kind of like a different, more professional relationship, I would say. But even though I'm working with the Sobeys organization, the process of getting my product into each store still very much the same. I meet with the department managers, have a conversation with them, tell them about the product, and it's very much every single relationship that I have with a store, even though it is considered professional, I still very much like treat it as a relationship. I go in, I talk to them, I get to know them. Even now I'm in like Sobeys, which is a corporation. I still go and meet with the managers, ask them all kinds of questions, because you want to be able to bring as much value to them as they are for you.
So it doesn't just happen, this overnight success.
No, definitely not. and whatever length of time you think the process is going to be, like, double it or triple it, because it's always going to take longer.
And it still speaks to what I think all of you have touched on, is building that network and having that those relationships with people that are like-minded. Everybody has touched on that in some way in your comments today. So that's important advice. Sam, I'm going to give you the last question before we go to questions from our guests. And I know this is a question that's important to every startup at some point. You've raised venture, you've raised non-dilutive funding. What options are available, and how do you approach that process?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I think that I get this question a lot because it's, it's a really it's really great to have an idea around a startup, but then it's like, oh, how do we actually fund doing this ourselves and the whole idea? So I mean, a bit of background for us. So we started off raising money through these competitions like what Hannah talked about. So I mean, Apex is one example where they'll fund you a little bit if you do get prize money in it. But then from there, we went on to get some non-dilutive funding, which was able to help fund some of the founders at the beginning. And then actually now we've gone and raised $2.5 million in venture funding and have been going through the process of, I guess, further funding beyond that. So we've kind of done each aspect of it. So to clarify, non-dilutive funding is funding where basically your company is not diluted. You don't give up any shares within the company or anything like that. So it can be loans. It's basically typically going to be debt or grant money, and lots of programs through the government to help with that. And then the other side of it is venture capital, or doesn't necessarily need to be venture capital, but venture and angel financing, where you do give up shares or you do dilute your ownership within the company. So the first thing I'd say is that venture capital isn't for everyone. So for example, I'm not sure Hannah's your approach yet, but you haven't had to do venture capital yet to nearly the same stage that we've had, and I think that's great because you don't have to go through this whole process that we've had to do and give up more ownership in the company and things like that. So first thing I'd say is that venture capital is not for everyone, so definitely consider which route you want to be going down, because there's a lot of expectations behind VCs where you need to be able to have a company that is going to grow to a certain scale where they're able to get their return back from it. Now, if you do go down the path of venture capital, the first starting point is really what Kelly's been talking about, which is having a good fundamental business plan for where you're going. And I'd say it's a business plan in a bit different in the sense where they might not be looking for a 20-page stack of paper that's associated with it, but they want to have a clear understanding that you've done the homework on what is your market, what is the clear problem that you are solving, and then really the big thing is what is the team that you've built around yourself. And that can be the team yourself, the co-founders who are working on it, but it can also be the team of advisors that you created around yourself and the network of people that you have basically at the tip of your fingers to work on this. So I'd say that those are some of the big things on the VC side of it. And you can reach out to VCs and get advice on this too, especially local ones. They'll be much more happy to help out and give a little bit of advice, like NBIF, for example. Then the other side of it is the non-dilutive financing. So a lot of that can come from programs like IRAP or ACOA and things like that. And that's where they can actually help at both the early stage in actually funding founders through programs like IRAP if you're working on, it used to be just technical, but actually across the whole range of things as youth. And then ACOA on the other side, which is more focused on commercialization, where this can be a bit further down the line where you're ready to go out and, like the stage that Hannah's at and are actually selling product in stores. So they will be looking for a much more succinct business plan that's actually, that stack of pages that go along with it. So, going back to Kelly's advice, you got to do the homework before you do either sides of these things.
Thank you so much. I know that's really the most important question for a lot of businesses is where are we going to get the money to keep going or to go ahead in the first place. So thank you for that. Now, we've received a couple of questions from the audience and I'm going to ask them. One is for Hannah and one is for Hannah and Sam. But what I'm going to do too, and I'm going to warn you right now, once they've answered those two questions, I'm going to ask each one of you to give me one sentence. What is your best piece of advice to an entrepreneur, a student entrepreneur who's going to launch their business? So think about that, Dave and Kelly, while Hannah and Sam are answering their questions. And both of you will have a little less time to think about it because you're going to be answering other questions. So Hannah, the first question that came in is for you. And we've been asked, how did you validate your business idea?
So a little bit was kind of research based. Whenever I was, starting Excitables 2017, 2018, there was a lot of research being published about the growth in the vegan and plant-based product market. People were throwing out estimates as to what the plant-based egg market was going to be valued at 5 years from now, et cetera. So a lot of that information was available on the internet, a lot of market research studies and stuff like that. quick Google search helped me figure out that, this is a very hot kind of market and a good product idea. But I would say the majority of the validation came from speaking with people, speaking with other entrepreneurs, reaching out to industry experts. I talked to a lot of people in the food industry, and just a lot of potential customers as well. Whenever I did the Summer Institute Accelerator program, one of my first projects was that one of our mentors told me to do was speak to 100 people about your business idea this week and write down all that information. So just talking to people and gathering information, I would say is like the best way to validate your business idea. Asking people is this product something that you would buy?
Thank you very much. And I loved it when you also said the word etc. But maybe that's just me being punny, so don't egg me on. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Okay, I see Sam rolling his eyes. That's awesome. So my question is for Hannah and for Sam. When you're launching a venture for the first time as a student, what were the biggest potential challenges that you faced, and what would you give as advice to overcome those challenges? So Sam, why don't you go first, since Hannah just answered? Give her a little breather. So what were the biggest challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say we ran into quite a few challenges along the way in terms of business model and funding and different aspects like that. I'd say probably two of the biggest challenges we ran into is one caused a pivot, which was we had fundamental challenges with the business plan that we had moving forward, and then the other, which is just a problem to any startup, but is on financing the venture, because you can have a cool idea, but if it requires $10 million to make it happen, then how do you get to that point? So I'd say on the first one, where it was really the problem was we had realized that I guess how we came to the problem was we were going out talking to customers that believed to be our end customers about converting vehicles to electric, for example, and we're basically getting an understanding of how much would these customers pay to convert a vehicle to electric, and then you start lining that up with how much does the BOM cost of doing this, and basically mapping this out, and you hit this problem that okay, people love this idea that we're working on, but it's not necessarily going to be a feasible venture. So the way that we kind of approach that is you go back, you start looking at like what are the fundamentals of the industry that we're working in, and the challenges that the customers are saying that they're facing and are going to be facing in the long term, because we had of course learned a lot about the industry as a whole versus just the consumer facing side of it, and start looking at it again from back in the napkin how this can happen. So I mean that's one side of it, and then I'd say the second one was on financing. So that the biggest way that we solved that problem is just by finding incredible people who have been through the process before. So this has been brought up multiple times in our conversation here, but if you can find people who have gone through the process of building a company from start to even exiting a company, in our case we were able to find mentors on that side of things, it just instantly makes a lot of these things a lot easier to go through, because you can go to them and say, oh hey, we're facing this challenge when it comes to financing. They'll say, oh well, have you tried this route? Have you tried talking to this person? Have you done this thing? And all of a sudden you actually have a roadmap to solving the problem, versus sitting at this stage where you're kind of looking at this gray area of things that you could do and you're not sure what's going to be the best one to do. So I'd say the biggest thing is talking to people.
Thanks very much for that. Hannah, do you have anything that you'd like to add? What was the biggest challenge, and how would you recommend that others could overcome a challenge like the one that you might have faced?
Yeah, so I'm happy to talk about this, because unlike Sam, I decided to go the opposite route. I didn't go out and seek any equity financing. My company is largely very bootstrapped. I've been funding it myself or through government programs, debt financing, things like that, which is great because I have total control over the organization. But of course, there are some downsides to going that route. And I think one of the biggest challenges of being like a student entrepreneur is I graduated with, a bit of student debt, and at the time, Excitables wasn't a like big enough organization to sustain a salary for myself. So in the early days, I had to make the hard decision to, get a part-time job and move in with my parents so that I could, afford to live while still try and like work on this business full time and grow it to become like a sustainable organization. So there's like as Sam mentioned, there's all kinds of options whenever you're just starting your business. So it is really important to kind of, step back and figure out what those goals are for you and what you want the organization to be, what you want your life and structure to be like, and figure out those things before you actually go out and do anything. I made the decision pretty early on that like I wanted to direct the company. I wanted to be in charge of what the mission and vision was going to be. And I did seek out advisors and mentors to help me with the more technical aspects of the organization, but I wanted Excitables to be a reflection of, what I want. And, that came with some challenges, including getting a part-time job, but ultimately, those decisions are up to you and what you want the company to be.
I think it's great that the two of you were able to join us today, looking at things from a very different perspective, different types of growth, different types of businesses, different types of products, different paths that you've taken, and yet at the same time, a lot of commonality as well. So now I'm going to do what I said I was going to do before. I'm going to ask each one of you, I'm going to start with David, then Kelly, then Sam, then Hannah. I'm going to ask you to give me one sentence, best piece of advice.
So I'd say that the first step is the critically important step, which is to understand the customer and their problem. That's my sentence.
Understand the customer and the problem. That's like, if you don't have that, you have nothing.
I agree.
Kelly, what about you?
So the number one thing I hear from all my clients in almost every counseling session is, I don't know what I'm doing. So if you feel like that, everybody feels like that.
You are not alone if you feel like you've got more road ahead of you than behind you in terms of knowledge. That's good advice. Sam, how about you?
In one sentence, I'd say, don't be afraid to talk to people. Any people.
Excellent. Don't be afraid to talk to people and get advice on whatever aspect of your business that you need advice on. And Hannah, you're going to get the final word.
Sam stole mine, so I guess I'll have to come up with another one. But I would say if you're faced with challenges or issues, take a deep breath, because there's a lot of people who have also gone through those things.
Those are 4 great pieces of advice, and I really appreciate those. And before we exit our program today, I wanted to say thank you so much to the 4 of you. You've been amazing panelists. You've given us wonderful perspectives. I want to say thank you to Nandi and the team at IBAC for organizing this panel for us. It's been excellent, and I hope that our guests today got a lot of benefit from it. I'd like to say thanks to Rogers TV for televising this, because I think it's wonderful that people in the community at large are going to get a great opportunity to learn about a program like this and to learn about how the growth of entrepreneurship is happening in our province and I guess in this whole region. And it's very exciting, and I think people need to hear more about that story. And thanks to all of you who are watching on Rogers. And if you have questions or if you want to learn more, then you can reach out to these exceptional entrepreneurs and talk to them. I'm sorry, I can't stop. And talk to them about it. You can reach out to Nandi and learn more about the IBAC program, Kelly at Planet Hatch, and Dave Ford at the University of New Brunswick. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Nandi. This has been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Krista. That was a fantastic panel. Thank you all so much. Hannah, Sam, Kelly, and David, thank you for sharing your valuable experiences with us today. It really goes a long way for anyone navigating the path as an entrepreneur. And thank you all for attending this Rogers TV special presentation, part of the 2022 Apex Business Plan Competition. And again, thank you to the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce and CEO Krista Ross.